Hello, we've got a really weird one for you this week. We are doing the low-budget Christian propaganda film God's Not Dead, and its sequel God's Not Dead 2, because with Ready Player One coming out, we felt it would be a better idea to do something tying into the upcoming release of God's Not Dead 3. If you are yourself a Christian, I would advise considering skipping this episode, because we make fun of you a little bit. This episode contains spoilers for God's Not Dead, God's Not Dead 2, and the Bible.
Hear ye, hear ye. Welcome to today's Diminishing Returns sermon. I am Reverend Calvin, and with me are Bishop Alan.
Good evening, Calvin. Thank you for having me. Very nice to be here tonight.
And Moyle Sol.
Moyle.
Roar! I'm roaring like a lion.
The Moyle's the person who does your circumcision, isn't it?
Yes, correct, yes.
Right, yes.
Oh, God.
So, today we're talking about God's Not Dead and the sequel,
He's surely
God's
alive.
Not Dead 2. I'd like to start off this podcast with an apology to both of you two, because while this was not a personal choice of mine, it is tying in with the upcoming God's Not Dead 3. I was the one to kind of spearhead this one and sort of force us into doing it. After watching them both back to back, I regret that decision.
Look, I was happy to watch at least the first one as a kind of cultural exercise in broadening my horizons. And yeah, I mean, we should acknowledge that Ready Player One's out this week. So we were talking about doing something that ties into what is probably going to be the biggest blockbuster of the year. But
No,
exactly.
Black Panther will be.
Second biggest after Avengers Infinity War, maybe.
I'm not convinced.
Anyway, Calvin, I'd like to thank you for bringing these films to us, because having watched these films, I have opened my heart to Jesus and decided to let Jesus into my life.
God.
So I'd like to say thank you to you.
Should we, much like our 50 Shades of Grey episode, where we sort of pointed out, look, we know we're not the target audience, we're not middle-aged, repressed housewives.
We're the perfect audience. We're the lost looking for the light, and that, this film shows it to us. White middle-class Christians have been oppressed for so long. Finally, someone has stood up for them.
And so obviously the three of us are atheists. In fact, Alan, you have identified yourself to me in the past as an antitheist, which they make a big thing out of in this film at one point.
Certainly I was in the past, not anymore. I've seen the light. I don't know why you're laughing. I mean, it's been a big moment for me. I mean, I've been searching for something, haven't I? So,
but Calvin, you're certainly an atheist.
Yes, very much so. Very much so.
Given your choice of lifestyle.
Yeah.
And,
yes, choice. Yes, it was a choice, wasn't it?
They all choose. Oh, that's another thing, and now I do hate homosexuals now, Calvin. Sorry about that.
So this will be the last episode of Diminishing Returns with this current lineup. One of us is going to go, and it's up to Sol to decide which one. So it's probably going to be me, actually, so I'll see you later.
I must admit, I'm still new to this Christianity thing. They seem a bit drawn on this whole gay thing. Some of them hate it. Some of them say it's fine. So I'm not sure where I stand on that yet. So I can hold off. I mean, my immediate feelings is that it's a sin, but I'm hoping that I'll be able to forgive you as long as you change your ways.
Well, Alan, the thing is that it's not being gay that's a sin.
It's acting on it.
It's performing a homosexual act. So Calvin is fine.
Good job, Calvin can't get a boyfriend then.
Should we give some context about what these films are? Because I'm sure a lot of our listeners have no idea.
No.
They're certainly not mainstream films. Well, we've spoken about this trend in Christian cinema on some past episodes. I think our Ben-Hur one touched on it. And it's quite a recent development that there's just been a spate of ultra low budget. Well, actually, these aren't that low budget, but low budget Christian themed films. Some people have basically figured out that, spend a few million on making a halfway presentable film, but with a real Christian bent aimed at the sort of, like, say, white middle class Christians who don't really follow the religion properly, but share Facebook posts about Jesus and stuff. They lap it up, and the marketing's built in because you're making something that directly appeals to people who have already kind of sorted themselves out from the pack as sheep. So it's become this real market with these ultra low budget Christian films, and God's Not Dead is perhaps the most well known of the lot.
It was certainly the one that I remember. I remember seeing posters of it, like on the tube on my way to work and stuff. So it must have had a healthy-ish, like, marketing campaign behind it.
Wow.
And both films have a couple of recognisable faces in them. Hercules himself, what's his name? Kevin Sorbo?
Sorbet? Yes.
Sorbo is in the first one, and Melissa Joan Hart's in the second one.
Is that Father Jim or whatever he's called?
No. Kevin Sorbo is
I'm trying to think of who
the
might look like a
atheist
Hercules.
lecturer.
Philosophy.
Oh, and he's Hercules.
Yeah, well, he used to be, and then he broke his. No, he had a stroke, didn't he? And then
He got hit by a car. And had to accept our Lord and Saviour.
In the film, he does. Well, we'll get there. Just to sort of give a brief synopsis of the films themselves for people who haven't seen them. I guess people haven't,
Well, it's the people's Christianity is under attack in modern America because of the PC Brigade, who won't let you have free speech.
Yes.
And they want the Muslims to take over. And so this is just showing some examples of how you can fight back against that and how we all have to stand up for what we believe in, if it's Christian gods.
The second one is all about a teacher who brings up Jesus in a classroom environment and is then taken to court over it and has to defend herself. And in the first film, a young college lad starts going to his philosophy lectures, and his lecturer is a mean atheist man who wants to stomp out all religion everywhere. And they debate each other, really. But it's it sounds like it would be a fairly, fairly even. You can leave the film making up your own mind after being presented with sort of facts from both sides and opinions and all that kind of stuff. But it's really not. They are essentially propaganda pieces, quite frankly.
Yeah, and I mean,
why not? I mean, the mainstream media is a propaganda for the Jews and the atheists who are trying to...
and the liberal Hollywood elite.
Yeah, exactly. And so finally...
That's why we love Donald Trump so much, because although Donald Trump collects his yearly residuals from the Actors Guild of America for the various films that he's appeared in, he is sticking it to the Hollywood liberal elite by being an outsider, even though he's not at all. So that's why America's going to be great again.
A little bit of push the other way, I think, is okay, don't you? Finally, someone who talks sense in politics, rather than these career politicians who just trying to line their own pockets.
In all seriousness, I went into this first film with a genuinely open mind.
No, you didn't, you liar.
No, I genuinely did. Because I was sceptical, but... I mean, I think this is going to be interesting for you to hear how I thought of it, really. I was sceptical going in, but I tried to be as open-minded as possible because I thought, like you just said, Alan, and I don't know if you were joking, but I did think, well, like, ultimately, everything is kind of propaganda to a sense. You're always going to instill some of your own belief about what, morality is and what have you on the piece. And, we're very fortunate as liberal people that Hollywood tends to align with our own beliefs. We never really have much of a problem with going to see a film and being like hugely offended by it. So yeah, I kind of thought, fair enough, maybe there's some room for this. And certainly off the bat, I was impressed with how not ridiculously absurd it was to begin with.
How far in did you get before that changed?
I've made like viewing notes. I mean, my first note here, if we just want to dive in,
right? Yeah. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, this film is from a company called Pure Flix.
Yes.
Now, this reminded me very much of Tommy Wiseau.
They're pure, like Jesus' heart.
Do you know much about that company? They produce quite a lot of these kinds of Christian films. In fact, I think they churn out about 3 or 4 a year.
They're like a Christian Blumhouse.
Pretty much, yeah. And you know Reverend Dave, who shows up later in the film?
Yes.
He's the guy with the long scraggly hair. He's one of the CEOs and co-founders, I believe, of that company.
So he's a real person?
Yes.
What was that Reverend Dave all about? I mean, I didn't understand what he was doing in the film anyway, but...
Well, he funded it, so...
That's bizarre.
Reverend Dave...
Which one's Reverend Dave? Was he the main pastor guy?
He's the one with like a smashed nose, isn't he? Like a big bulbous smashed nose.
He's the one who's got his reverend friend over from Africa or whatever, and they're trying to go to Disneyland.
The main pastor in the story,
yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah, that makes sense. I wondered why he came back in the second one.
Yeah.
My next note is a Harold Kronk film.
It's nothing.
A funny name.
Nothing's funny.
The name of the director. Harold Kronk.
Right.
I did say. I must say though, before we get into this, all these notes I made were kind of before I became enlightened about the truth of Jesus. So
of course,
this is the old Alan's notes.
Yeah.
So when, for example, my first note is even this insipid inspirational music over the credits is annoying me. That was before I learned to accept the Newsboys into my heart and open my mind to Newsboys.
Yeah, my note is, what is Newsboys? What are they, a band? Question mark. But I'm now very familiar with them. And their smash hit, God's Not Dead.
I love it that there's a credit in the main credit sequence that like credits someone's research or studies or something. And
yeah,
that's a very unique credit.
Well, over the end credits, I mean, I'll save it for the end credits, but there's some fucking bizarre stuff in the end credits.
Oh,
it was like It was like watching The Naked Gun when they had like best boy, worst boy, Adolf Hitler, and little stuff like that dotted around in there.
Yeah, but the research they've got is from someone called Rice Brooks, who seems to write books in defense of the existence of Jesus. I don't know, the fact that someone is called Rice is perhaps evidence of a godless world, but there you go, whatever. Well, all right, let's get into the plot then, because basically you got this kid, he's at college, and he signs up for his classes, including one that is a liberal arts class that you've got to do, apparently, in modern America. So he takes philosophy, introduction to philosophy, I guess it is. And he goes to his class, and the tutor there starts his opening class by going, right, look, we're going to deal with philosophy. We all know religion is bollocks. Sorry, I'm not swearing anymore. We all know religion is rubbish. So
you can swear, you can't blaspheme.
Yeah, is bollocks the name of the Lord? Anyway, so
God's bollocks.
Anyway, so he says, "Look, we'll just wipe religion off. We'll save ourselves a lot of time. God is dead, and then we can get down to proper philosophy. So I just want you all to write God is dead, and then sign it, and then we're all happy." And obviously, this one particular kid who is a devout Christian wants to stand up for what he believes in and refuses to do it.
And I mean, I think it's pretty reasonable that the tutor's like, can we just skip past this? But he's making it very theatrical, isn't he?
Yeah, well, I mean, I thought at this point that it might be no philosophy scholar, no philosophy tutor is going to wipe.
No, of course they're not.
Philosophy and theology go hand in hand, have done for centuries. So obviously it's not something anyone would really do. So I assumed it was an inciting act. He's doing it to make someone stand up and go, "Oh no!" And then we go, "Right, let's have a debate."
I was expecting that twist.
Yeah, that's what I assumed it was. Like there was going to be, and then he was getting more and more involved in it, and I realised that wasn't going to be the case. But when it was still sort of 20 minutes in, I thought it was going to be like, "Well, I challenged you, and only one of you stood up." And even though, according to statistics, 80% of you are Christians. And
my note around this point is this isn't actually bad so far. My note says it's cheap and it's basic, but I was expecting it to be a lot worse. Because initially it seems fairly even-handed and not that bad. But I've also made a note that I want to point out, just that the lead character's called Josh Whedon. Is that distracting for you guys?
Not really.
It's just it's weird, isn't it?
It didn't bother me too much. And I think we're on the same page here. Like, certainly for this first encounter, of the class and the lecturer, I was sort of on board with it. And throughout the opening credit sequence, we see snapshots of other people going about their lives, and there's like a Muslim woman who's got the what's it called, the wraparound the headscarf. Yeah, she's just got the headscarf on, and I'm thinking like, oh, okay, so this isn't just going to be about Christianity; it's going to be about maybe all religions, and
she was, and the establishment of her character is that she wears this veil when her dad's around, but as soon as she's away, she's like, oof, get that off. So, so she's obviously wants to challenge certain elements of her religion, perhaps. That's what we're thinking. Old school versus these new young people, whatever.
So my note here basically is I like the professor. He's the first character that I've warmed to immediately. And it's just 12 angry men, but with God. And then I've written loads of things like 12 angry gods, 12 spiritual men. And my note is exactly what you were saying, Alan. This seems like a brilliant teacher who knew that a student in his class would stand up for God and it would get some great debate going.
What would probably happen in that circumstance is that a couple of people would go, no, I can't do that. In fact, most people in America would go, well, I'm not going to do that. Even if I don't particularly believe, I'm not going to just sign that. It's ridiculous. And then he would go, right, let's have a debate. The fact that just one person stands up and says no, and all the others are like, oh, for fuck's sake, just say God is dead, God. Like, even if they were reluctant, once one person stands up, the other one would go, yeah, actually, do you know what? I'm a Christian as well. Actually, I think this is bullshit. So far, not very realistic.
Yeah, but I was on board with it. I honestly wasn't, like, I thought it was relatively entertaining so far, and I wasn't that, like, bothered by it. But then we're introduced to our evil, lefty, liberal, snowflake news reporter, blogger, podcaster, whatever she is, who
is that Amy Ryan?
Yeah,
that's the character's name,
who basically, what's the word? Pounces on the Duck Dynasty guy.
The poor Duck Dynasty guy who's just trying to go to church.
Yeah. Just to say, what the fuck? Why do you believe in God?
And why do you like shoot animals? God,
and nobody in their right mind would behave like that. That's not. It's not even close to a normal character. It's very weird.
It's how she performs it as well, the actress, because I guess that everyone involved in this is probably a devout Christian, and that's why they're involved with it. But every line she has is just, like, spat out at the guy. Like, she just really can't stand, like, she's scowling at them while she's doing this interview. So she's not a very good interviewer for a start. And then it quickly becomes apparent that pretty much every non-believer in the film is going to be presented in a similar fashion.
Yeah. And I've made a note about the Muslim girl here, actually, because I this is something I'm going to touch on a bit later, but I think it's important to point out how, like, wrong, basically, incorrect this film's understanding of Islam is, because I think it's
you really feel you needed to say that.
I think it's it's one thing to be like portraying atheists in a completely ridiculous way, but when you start bringing like other religions into it and you're portraying them like factually wrong, it's kind of quite dangerous and offensive, frankly. So the fact that girl wears a headscarf.
Hello, snowflake soul.
What?
Oh, I'm offended. I'm offended for the Muslims.
Well, anyway, so
no, we'll get some good debate. Okay, yeah.
This is the girl's headscarf, right? She's in the car with it, but it just shows on the part of the filmmakers such a complete and utter lack of understanding about what that is. Because, firstly, it's a niqab, I think, when we first encounter her, which is more of a cultural thing that's basically comes from Saudi Arabia, which is obviously quite an oppressive country for a number of reasons. And it's not really a religious thing, but the headscarf is, which is the much less extreme version where you've got more than just a letterbox that your eyes can peer through. But the whole point of it is to basically make you modest and cover up all but your face so that you're not like turning on men who can't control themselves around you. Now, when she turns up in the car with her dad, her arms are out. She's wearing like quite a low-cut top, I think. She's wearing like normal westernized sexy clothing, and then she's just put a headscarf on top of it, and that is not remotely how someone like that would behave. And if a dad cared to the point that he does in this film, he would kick off about it. He would lose his fucking shit about addressing like that. So right off the bat, very, very, very inaccurate portrayal of Islam.
Maybe he's one of those moderate Muslims who lets them get away with certain things.
I mean, but then he forces her to wear a headscarf, so...
I was kind of going with that. We've got all these different subplots going on, and I was kind of wondering if each one was going to come out with a different perspective or conclusion or something. I wasn't quite braced for the fact that, no, this is pure Christian propaganda, and everyone who is, who will come good in the end will become a Christian, and those who aren't smoted.
I mean, my next note probably shows how quickly I began to get annoyed with this film, though. I think it becomes a bit more venomous. So it is... Rev Dave is such a flat-faced cunt, like Steve Irwin after having his face trampled by a wild stampede of crocodiles.
He's a bit Steve Irwin-y, yeah. Seems like a nice guy, though, doesn't he?
No, he's horrible. I hate him.
It's just like a wacky pastor.
Him and his mate, who are just so... These are the kind of guys who would turn up at your doorstep and, want to hand out a leaflet on Christmas Day or something, and you're like, no, I want to open my presents.
And then ask you to pay 25p towards covering the costs of printing the thing.
And it seems to be a running gag throughout both of these films that Reverend Dave, he has bad luck. Him and his mate want to go to Disneyland, the car's not
so
working.
Funny.
Things happen to him, and I think we're supposed to think that God is sort of pranking him.
Well, he's one of God's mates, isn't he? That's why, yeah.
No, it's because everything happens for a reason, isn't it? The ending is this sort of Magnolia-esque look at how everything comes together and God made all this stuff happen, which we'll get to in a bit more detail, because if that is the idea, it paints God as a monster. But so then we find out our lefty liberal has cancer, and my note is...
the reporter.
Yeah, I bet she finds God. She's so busy on her phone, like all millennials.
And she's also got a horrible boyfriend, Superman, from The Adventures of Lois and Clark in the 90s, if you remember him, Dean Cain.
Yeah. I've got a note about him. I put, I know Dean Cain character is being painted by this unconvincing writing as a total unremitting arsehole, but I actually quite like him. You've got to admire the courage of someone who dumps their girlfriend because she has cancer. I mean, it's brutal, but he just has no compunction about it whatsoever. He's just like, sorry, love, I ain't got time for that. You got to admire that kind of forthrightness.
And it's all kind of interconnected because the liberal reporter's brother... the liberal reporter's boyfriend is the brother of the university lecturer's girlfriend, who is also a devout Christian. And we have some scenes of her earlier on looking... there's a whole, snippets of her at a supermarket, and she's picking up olive oil and, smiling and nodding and walking away. And she does the exact same thing with wine. It's everything she picks up, she has this, yeah, and then walks off. It's very distracting.
She messes up, doesn't she?
I think it was in the next scene in the lecture hall after the initial encounter that I really started turning on the film, because it is apparent then that they are just going to portray this professor as a complete arsehole.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same.
That's when we find out that this isn't a bit that he's doing. He's actually really taking it personally. Yeah, when he confronts the student and says, "Why are you doing it? Why are you challenging me, you arsehole? I'm going to fail you."
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing. It'd be one thing if he was not doing a bit and he meant all of it, but it's another that he's so small and petty that he won't even take the kid on in a fair debate without throwing his toys out of the pram, even though it's something he instigated himself. But that first bit of debate scene, which is when the film really kind of starts doing what people came to see, it is just, oh god, it is such bullshit. So fucking just biased and omitting very important details, and Josh Whedon, showrunner of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel and Firefly,
he loves the occult.
His first argument is that the Bible had it right and science had it wrong back in the day. And it's because he says something like, how can it be that for so many hundreds of years the Bible had it right and science had it wrong? It's no, science didn't really exist as a concept, actually, Josh. It's science only really came into being as the quality of life began to improve in the world, to the point that you could have people who weren't toiling in the fields and worrying about eating. When you had monks, basically, I mean, it was largely like religious people to begin with, who were some of the first to start really dabbling in science.
The religious people were most educated, and that's how they knew things that they've passed on.
And his argument is that the Big Bang's kind of what you'd think it'd be like when God created the universe, therefore God must have done it.
Exactly. So
religion exists because everything kind of superficially matches up with broad expectations. Sunset being beautiful must be God, etc. You know, it's
well, Christianity. I mean, I don't know about religion, but a Christian God will create a beautiful something that his creation, man, will find beautiful.
Alan?
Because obviously he's creating a world tailored to us.
Alan,
yes.
What type of Christian are you?
I'm a bit new to the whole Christianity thing. I haven't worked that out yet. I quite like the idea of actually eating Jesus. So the Catholicism thing appeals, but they are very big on guilt. I don't know if I'll go for that.
I think you'd be quite a niche one. I think you'd be like a Calvinist or a Presbyterian or something.
A Calvinist? That sounds close to home. The beauty of Christianity is that it has splintered into 800 different types of Christianity, and you can just pick and choose whatever you want. And in fact, from what I understand from what I researched so far, you can read the Bible, pick out the bits you like, ignore the bits you don't. It's great. I mean, you can pretty much take whatever you want from it, and then say you're a Christian and get charitable status and don't have to pay tax. It's great.
Is it around about here where they because they talk about this Big Bang theory and how God must have done that, and they immediately override the argument of, well, you know, the natural response to that would be, well, who created God then, if God created?
Yeah.
And they override that by saying that God cannot actually be created because he's eternal or something. What is it exactly that they say?
I mean, that's the argument, that God has always been, and that you're kind of viewing things through a very primitive fourth dimensional way of looking at the world, rather
exactly
than
your so-called science and laws of so-called physics is just your very narrow view of the world. God's grace defies all scientific facts.
The idea is basically that you can't even look at God as like a thing defined by time as we know it, that he's just always been, always has been, always will be, and it's a cheap and easy cop-out, basically, but it's sort of the defense of it.
It's around this point that we see that Josh is starting to win over some of his classmates, that he has this Chinese, is he an exchange student or what is he? He's
I don't know,
Martin Yip is his name.
He's not a great actor.
Also, that when this boy is trying to stand up for what he believes in, everyone around him is also telling him to stop, including his girlfriend. And they seem to be in a very long-term relationship. They've planned their future. They know exactly where they're going to live with a little white picket fence. And I did put a note here, if God leads him away from this cunt of a girlfriend, then religion must be good for something. So, obviously, I was a different person back then when I wrote the word cunt. Obviously, now I would never use that.
This film does itself such a disservice by its just hideously two-dimensional villain writing. That girlfriend character is ridiculous. The tutor is ridiculous. Every character who's not some pious hero to be put on a pedestal is just, I mean, two-dimensional is perhaps generous. It's just absurd.
The point of this character as well is that he's doing pre-law, his girlfriend wants him to go to law school, blah, blah, blah. But then she's like, oh, don't get involved in a debate. Don't get involved in where you have to argue something. That's no good for a lawyer. Don't do that.
The thing is, like, it's never portrayed once as a good relationship, a healthy relationship.
No, we don't see anything of the relationship at all. It's not set up at all until she comes up and goes, why are you debating this guy? Just admit that God is dead. God.
Nor is it ever portrayed as a relationship that Josh has any stake in, that he cares about. He doesn't seem remotely bothered about it. He doesn't seem remotely upset by having to make a choice between her and God. So when it becomes
that's not a choice at all, is it? I mean, that's fair enough.
Like, it's obviously meant to play as a moment of sacrifice, and instead it plays as you just think, oh, thank God for that. He's out of that horrible relationship, and we don't have to...
Please don't take God's name in vain.
It's about this point that the Muslim subplot really kicks off and comes into play properly, and this is when the film becomes truly, like... unforgivably offensive, if you ask me, because it's so misguided in what it's doing.
Well, no, I think this is a very sort of even-handed, tempered depiction of Islam. And, I'm very much like her. I like to come back after a hard day's work and unwind with listening to a bit of Christian scripture on my iPod.
And what happens, Alan, when she's listening to the nice bit of scripture on her iPod?
Yeah, she's just having a nice relax, listening to a bit of Christian scripture.
And her brother inexplicably is compelled, I should say, to get up and go into her bedroom and look at what she's
Finds
doing.
out she's...
For no reason whatsoever. And he grabs her phone and runs and tells Dad. Now, the problem with this is that Muslims don't really take issue with the Bible. The Quran is essentially a third book of the Bible, and essentially it's built upon the other two testaments. It's the Quran isn't a book of this happened and this happened. It's a book of teachings that by Muhammad. The idea is that brush your teeth, be nice to each other, that sort of stuff. And so when you want any kind of historical context from a religious point of view, you have to dig up the Bible or the Torah or something and look to these other religious texts that more or less believe the same thing, because it's an Abrahamic religion. So Muslims will read the Bible quite happily, and you'll be encouraged to read the Bible and take it in from an Islamic point of view. So the idea that this guy would then come in and beat his daughter without having listening to what she has to say because she happened to be listening to some scripture is fucking absurd.
Yeah, but fair enough. I believe that Islam is a sort of a weak offshoot of Christianity that has corrupted over time. But
that is very true. Muslims believe in Jesus as well, They Jesus
is a true historical figure. We've established this.
Exactly. but my point is Muslims believe in Jesus. He's believed to be a prophet, just like Muhammad. You know how much they love Muhammad.
Praise be upon him.
Well, they love Jesus. He's one of the bloody prophets. They'll celebrate Christmas, generally speaking, as a kind of oh yeah, it's one of the prophets.
No, you're wrong. See, they're trying to stop us celebrating Christmas. They want to call it Xmas or winter holiday. This is very true. They don't let you sing Christmas songs in schools
and
anymore.
Mark Zuckerberg has banned any depiction of the nativity on Facebook. So if you see a picture of nativity, you have to share it around before he gets to it and takes it down.
Yeah,
so that everyone will see that we won't put up with this.
I think they want to impose Sharia law on everyone, don't they? And that's true.
I think it was probably that man who was driving the car at the end that kills that professor. Almost definitely.
Yeah, my next note is that the professor's wife is hot, and the message I took from that really is that I should be an arrogant atheist, because he's doing all right, isn't he?
And she is one of his former students. They met when she was a student, and apparently that's not against the rules. It's just frowned upon for the teacher to shack up with a student.
It's just hilarious that we're expected to believe that this guy who seems so he's not even interested in debating the existence of God. He's just emphatic that no, there isn't one.
Yeah.
Will stick his flag in the sand on that, and yet he has this devout Christian girlfriend. And
who met in his class, where he made her sign a piece of paper that says God's dead.
He's a typical arrogant, closed-minded atheist who is a misogynist. He doesn't respect her opinion, so he's not interested in her opinion, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to him. Whereas Jesus hung out with women all the time.
The thing is, though, I think it's because I'm new to this whole dating game at the minute, and I must say you do seem to find a lot of quite attractive Christians, because I think being very attractive and being stupid often goes hand in hand. And I think that's sort of the Venn diagram.
Well, I find that offensive.
You don't go to church or practice it, but when the census comes around, you write Catholic and you have your kids christened. Yeah.
Well, no? Catholics don't have them christened.
No, wait, what? Don't they?
No, you get confirmed.
Is christening Protestant?
Yes. Well, it's Church of England.
Is it?
So yeah.
Yeah, is Church of England not Catholic?
No.
That's why Henry VIII changed it.
That's the whole reason there is a Church of England, because they split from the Catholics.
Oh, is Church of England? Is Church of England Henry VIII?
Close-minded atheist.
I thought Henry VIII created Protestantism.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know that was Church of England. I thought he fell out with the Church of England.
No, he fell out with the Church of
they were the
Rome.
Catholics.
Well, they were before he created the Church of England.
Exactly.
Well, you don't know what you're talking about, you see. This is typical of an atheist. They don't do any research. You don't know anything. Let me tell you this. God is watching, and he is judging you. So you might want to balance those scales a little bit.
My favourite scene is around this point in the film, and it's to do with the professor and his girlfriend when they're throwing the party for his liberal hoity-toity friends.
The rudest dinner guest in the history of the world.
I was laughing out loud.
My quotes are, "This wine is awful. It's like it's been in a mouldy basement."
Oh no, it's great. I loved that bit so much, because this wine that we saw her pick out so lovingly at the start of the film and smile and, nod about, she left it in the boot of her car when it was sunny outside, so she pours
Silly
it for
cow.
everyone. And that one bottle goes a long way, because there's about 8 people around that table and they've all got a full glass of wine, and they're all swilling it and sipping it and saying, "Oh, it's been boiled." And that's just as she's... Notice that she never feels like a part of the party. She's always walking in with a plate of something or glasses or something like that.
Because people don't respect Christians anymore. They put them onto a lower plane.
That's just it. I just thought it was so funny that everyone there is an atheist and they're all intellectuals and snobby and like, "Oh yes, my wine and my fancy home and all that kind of thing."
Try the wine.
Pretty much. I just thought it was so funny, and then she gets so upset about it because she's like, "I picked out that wine," and I thought it was so funny, just how mean everyone is to her.
I think they missed the trick by not having Josh Whedon ploughing her in front of the atheist professor at the end, maintaining direct eye contact as it happens, and giving him a little thumbs up.
Dear. But anyway, that's what causes her to leave him, finally.
And then we cut back to the debate that's sort of taking place over the course of the semester or whatever. Josh comes back to the whole Stephen Hawking argument, saying that it's circular reasoning because Hawking said the universe needed to exist, blah, 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 blah. And it's a complete and utter misunderstanding and twisting of what the argument was in the first place. Hawking obviously said that the universe exists because the laws of physics pull it into existence, which is not the same as saying that the universe exists because it needs to exist. We should also add that Christianity is built on circular reasoning, so to attack circular reasoning as a defense of Christianity is not smart.
Mm.
No, Christianity is built on the word of God, which is indisputable, and
and then they get onto
what can defy God's will? What can defy God's will? Nothing.
What about the devil?
He cannot defy God's will.
Yeah, you can.
Humans
can. That's why we were cast out of paradise.
Exactly, because the devil got an influence on them.
They get onto evolution, and this is when I got really fucking angry, really started to get pissed off, because it was so... It's one thing to be a Christian, it's another to deny, scientific fact. It's just... And their argument against evolution is to look at the history of the universe, and then the little snapshot in which life has existed, and say, look, it's barely any time at all compared to all this other time. So how could it evolve? It's meant to take ages. Yeah, because that snapshot represents millions of years, you fucking idiot.
Exactly.
Christ. Oh my God, you
God created
fucking
the world
wanker, Josh.
in
Josh
7
Whedon.
days, so...
Josh. Fucking dropping out of Batgirl, Josh Whedon. Oh, a woman has to direct it now. The climate's changed, Josh. We don't want your Batgirl, especially not after Justice League, you cunt.
See, you're very angry, and perhaps if you accepted Jesus into your life, then...
In that same evolution bit, they point out that not every species was even around at the dawn of time, that some have sprung into existence since then. They even acknowledge that. So how could that happen if it all came from the Garden of Eden? How could that happen without evolution? And then someone says it's easy to dismiss what you don't understand, and this is someone who was just dismissing evolution. So, oh my God, honestly... Well, Josh's next argument is that without God, there's no reason to be moral,
Exactly. How do you
Next
live
question.
a moral life without Christianity? There is no other possible way to find a moral code in life unless you've got Christianity. That's why you live such a heathenistic life.
That's absolutely fine. I mean, it's correct. There's without God, there's no reason to be moral. Correct. Next question. Like, does that prove God? I don't really see how it's relevant, to be honest.
You want a world without God that will be chaos, and you want to murder people and rape people.
It's not about what we want, is it? It's about whether or not that's an actual bit of proof in favour of.
But you as a so-called atheist, how do you take moral decisions in your life?
How do I stop myself from murdering people just on the fly? It's hard work, isn't it?
You can't, can you? Because you go around killing people, stealing probably. No doubt you take false idols.
Oh yeah,
and covet your neighbour's ox.
Yeah. Do all that. Should we? Oh, let's do this, right? Because this is always fun. Let's get the 10 Commandments up and let's see which ones we've adhered
Oh,
to.
brilliant. They're in order of importance as well, aren't they? From 1 to 10.
I believe so. Okay, so number 1, I am the Lord thy God, thou shalt not have any gods before me.
I've never had any gods before him.
Do Power Rangers count? Because I liked them like gods.
Yeah, I think they do actually. Yeah, I think a really angry Christian would say that caring about anything more than God, which I absolutely do, would count as a violation of that. So Alan, you're pure so far, but Calvin and I, we're one down, 1 for 1. Number 2, you shall not make for yourself an idol in the form of anything. So certainly Calvin and I, we're guilty of that. You've got your little Freud's action figures,
Golden gun.
and I've got my Pokemon. What have you got?
Yeah.
You don't have any possessions, do you? You've just got
nothing. I don't. Oh, that's a bit too Buddhist. Don't say that.
All right. Number 3, you shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God. Well, I did that earlier on, Alan. You corrected me.
You've done it several times in this conversation.
Yeah. Calvin, I think you do that.
Yeah.
I've stopped now and asked for forgiveness, so it's fine.
Okay. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. Which day is it? Sunday's what I've heard, but I think sometimes it's Friday.
Oh.
Friday evening if you're a Jew.
Friday evening is pretty holy for me.
Is that a gay joke?
Right. No. Yep, never mind. Yep. All right, no, next.
Is that a bum sex joke or like a toilet cubicle joke?
It could be either, couldn't it? But I guess, like, I read something that said that a joke with 2 possible punchlines is a very bad joke, so... Never mind.
Well, I don't work on Sundays because I'm unemployed, so I think I'll borrow that one.
Okay, but let's remember that work includes, a lot of things like
I do turn on the lights.
Yeah. Honor your father and your mother. Well, I think we're all guilty of that on this podcast.
What? We've honoured our mothers. I let mine on the podcast.
Then we've got you shall not murder.
Oh.
I mean, fair enough. I haven't ever murdered anyone, so that
Are
this is the
animals
first
included in that?
one. I don't think so, because God's always killing him. But then he kills people, actually, doesn't he? Now you shall not commit adultery. Well, we're all guilty of that because under Christian law, that's anything outside of marriage counts as adultery. That's why you're living a life of sin, Calvin, because you can't marry in the eyes of God. In fact, I think that's pretty much the only reason why homosexuality is like a sin, isn't it? Because you just can't do it within a godly marriage, and therefore it's adultery.
I'll tell you what, though, Sol. I'd say of the 3 of us, the one most likely to be married legally to a woman is Calvin. Don't you think? Like when he gets about 58, he's going to marry a woman.
I see what you mean.
We know this. We know this. It's going to happen.
I think you're right, actually. Yeah, out of the 3 of us, that is quite a.
I mean, I'm not saying it'll be a sexual relationship.
Oh, then fine. Yeah, just companionship.
This is what I mean. Yeah, like when you're a bit older, and then you'll think, "Hey, let's get married." There's probably some tax breaks or something, pension or whatever, and then you'll do it. It'll be like a companionship thing. Yeah.
I might get married pretty soon, to be honest, just to spite my ex. So.
Like before you've even moved out.
Yeah. I don't agree with marriage or anything, but I think it'd be pretty funny. So.
How many are we down on the commandments?
So that was adultery. That was 7. So we've got 3 more. Okay. Thou shalt not steal. So I'm pretty sure I've stolen something in some
I will
capacity.
Have done at some point.
So intellectual property, we're always stealing that on this show.
I stole I stole God's Not Dead when I watched it online.
There you go. I stole both these films. Exactly that.
Was I the only one that paid to see them?
Did you pay money for this shit?
I know, I'm really sorry.
I knew it was going to like upset me, so to the point that I would be annoyed if I put money into the system. But you shall not give false testimony against your neighbour, so you can't lie, basically. Well, we all lie. Come on, it's what the Bible's built on.
I've never lied.
And you shall not covet your neighbour's house, wife, or property. So,
I've certainly done that.
if you want anything at all, then that's a sin.
I tell you what. Calvin is one of the most covetous people I know.
Yeah.
Definitely always got an eye on the neighbour's oxen.
Yeah,
Giving it a once over. That's a lovely bit of oxen over there.
but looking at this, right? That's 9 out of 10 of the 10 Commandments that you and I, Calvin, break on a regular basis, mostly, I think. We just don't murder people very often, so...
Yeah, which is fair enough. That's a pretty good one.
Because I say I'm new to the whole Christianity thing. So, God, Jesus is God. He's the Son of God. They are one and the same thing. They all praise and love Jesus instead of God, or they do love God as well. What is the whole God-Jesus dynamic thing?
They're literally the same thing.
Yeah.
God is Jesus, and he's also the Holy Spirit and the Holy Father.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Holy Trinity. They're the same, like, thing. It's like in Power Rangers when they all join up to make a big ranger, like a Gigazord or whatever they're called.
I was wondering if it was like, like how Diglett becomes Doug Trio. Is it sort of like that?
Yeah, I think so. It's like that drag act. You know those drag acts where they'll be like one half's a man, one half's a woman, and they'll like do a duet and turn around as they sing each part.
I don't watch such things. It's immoral.
God's that, but with 3 of them.
Let's talk about the ending.
So Josh Whedon like tricks Josh Whedon with his incredible
Josh Wheaton.
Josh Whedon with his incredible wit that he's known for. And wordplay tricks the professor into acknowledging the existence of God by asking if he hates God. And he says, "Of course I hate God. God's a twat." And then he goes into a tirade. And everyone goes, "Oh, got you. That means God's real."
How can you hate something that doesn't exist, Mr. So-called professor?
But the thing is, and I think this is worth pointing out, like, if God is real, then, like, I hate him. I think he's an awful person. He's really not pleasant at all.
He only smites the non-believers and sinners. So as long as you haven't done anything wrong, you shouldn't have anything to worry about.
I didn't ask for all this. I don't want to be born.
You didn't ask to be born.
No.
That's your defense. like a petulant teenager. God gave us free will so that we could make our own decisions within his strict guidelines. He
did so knowing that other people could then fuck things up for other people, which is in no way offering any sort of protection or anything. He did so knowing that, like, a 35-year-old man could abduct a 5-year-old and brutally rape and murder them, and the 5-year-old would have no recourse or anything they could do about it, and then God just leans back and lets it happen, because, hey.
Yeah, but that 5-year-old goes to heaven, unless it's eating fish on a Friday.
So,
Yes.
in the case of the professor who is hit by a car at the end of the film, is
Yeah,
that
that'll teach
divine intervention? Did God cause that to happen? Or was that just an act of free will by some random human and God did not intervene to stop it? Because we have seen that God can apparently intervene in the universe of the film and alter the course of characters' lives.
Well, hang on. Before we get there, it's worth noting that the debate is sort of concluded with an I'm Spartacus moment as everyone...
Yes.
Every student stands up and says,
"Oh,
God's not dead. God's not."
There was one
dead.
that didn't.
There was
one.
a couple I noticed that were still sticking to their foolish guns.
It becomes incredibly apparent that none of the subplots have like paid off or connected into the main story in any capacity yet. So now we've got like a frantic closing moment. I have a question actually. So Martin.
The Chinese guy.
Is that a question?
Yeah. Is he gay? Because the way it plays in this film is that he is your typical gay character who is kind of torn between their lifestyle and religion and chooses to kind of ultimately repress their true self in order to appease some nonsense I can't speak.
Yeah.
Religious
Religical,
doctrine
that's the
that's like been jammed into their head since childhood. Did anyone else get that impression? Because he's very camp.
He's very camp, yes, but I think this is because, like I was saying, I'm assuming that every actor and everyone involved in this is some kind of a devout Christian in their own way, and I have met quite a few.
How many Christians that like really lean into it are repressed homosexuals? Because I think it's probably
quite a few.
Yeah,
yeah. I
think this actor's probably gay.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Yeah,
okay.
And I think he's just playing it. I think that's just the way he is. Anyway.
I think this film sort of tries to have a twist at the end, but I think they really missed out on a good twist, which would have been if the professor scratched his little goatee and it turned out he was Old Scratch and he was there to like lead the students astray.
I don't know what that is.
He was like trying to get them to write.
Satan.
He was trying to steal their souls by having them denounce God in class and with a cane and like a little.
I mean, that would have taken me by surprise. I'll give you that.
I think it would have worked about as well as the ending we got.
Right, can we finally talk about this? Because he is hit by a car.
Everyone's going to a concert to hear God's Not Dead being sung over and over again. Can I just read out my next few notes, which cover this car scene, and then we'll kind of go back to it, but just to kind of... Worst car hitting someone effects I've ever fucking seen.
Have you never seen Meet Joe Black?
No, I've not. The atheist gets nearly killed so that Reverend Dave can save him and make him believe in God. Oh my fucking God, this is the most offensive thing I've possibly ever seen. Imagine being that cunt. You see a guy dying and you run in to convert them to Christianity on their deathbed. In this universe, God is clearly real and he chose to kill the professor in an act of pettiness.
Yeah, but what happened though? You're saying that's an act of pettiness, but what happened? He found God again, and he found forgiveness and absolution before he died, and so he's going to go to heaven.
Well, he found God because he believed in him all along and was scared into like accepting it. So he was bullied into accepting Christianity,
and he needed to go into an extreme point in his life to be ready to accept the truth of God again.
But there was nothing about dying at that point compared to like being on his deathbed at age 70 that would have made it any different.
No, because it all had to happen all at once. Otherwise, he would have walked away and gone, "Oh yeah, do you know what? Forget it. I broke up with my girlfriend. That kid made some very true facts and interesting points, but ultimately I'll forget about them," because he picks and chooses what facts he likes to listen to, doesn't he? I mean, like most atheists. So it all had to happen at that time when he was at a point of emotional distress, because that's when it's easiest to let God in, because we've let our defenses down.
It's like how I broke up with my girlfriend recently, and I went on a date with someone the other day, and don't really know what I was thinking. They're like dropping my standards that much, to be honest. But it's the same thing, isn't it?
You're saying God's a rebound?
Pretty much. I mean, yeah, right? I mean,
yeah. God's the rebound that will last you the rest of your life. Can you put that on a jumper for me, please?
What I'm curious about here is how we as an audience are supposed to feel in this moment, because I don't know if we're supposed to think, yeah, good, the bastard is dead, hooray.
No, you're meant to think how beautiful he's going to heaven.
Oh, right, okay.
He's going to heaven. He's been saved. They've saved him. He's got like the purest like ending of all. He dies and goes to heaven, and it all came together in a way so that he could be saved and could go to heaven, and it's not sad because we all know that death isn't the end. And
well, they say that, like Reverend Dave's talking to his other Reverend mate, and his other Reverend mate is like, "What happened tonight is beautiful. Just a moment of pain, and then think how of all the joy in heaven right now." And they're like laughing and like, "Oh, isn't this great?" It's like,
and they're praying for Cancer Girl to pull through, so they don't want her.
Yeah, because it wouldn't be joyous if she were to go to heaven for some reason, but for the lecturer, it's apparently reason for celebration. I just don't... the mentality of it. It's like, why aren't you just like slaughtering babies at birth if it's so wonderful in heaven?
Because God says that's bad, you can't murder. It's like the laws of robotics. They thought it through. They knew you were going to do that, and that's why they...
You see, yeah, exactly. You can't commit suicide because you don't want the shortcut. You've got to do your time. and try and do good things while you're down here.
But there's no rule against just living a very dangerous existence. So you're not allowed to directly kill yourself, but you can start abusing dangerous drugs. You can take up horse riding and not wear a helmet. You can go driving the wrong way down the motorway at like 200 miles an hour. So there's all sorts of things you can do if you'd like to go to heaven early.
So, with your so-called atheist mind, you're trying to find loopholes here, and it's not about that. It's about what you truly believe.
Yeah.
God, you're not going to stand in front of the gates of heaven, and St. Peter's there going, "So, do you think you lived a good life?" And you go, "Well, no, but here's a loophole I snuck through."
You're putting your own human morals on this, and as we know, God is the be all and end all of what is and isn't moral. And so if God left a loophole in his divine wisdom, in his omnipotent like power and knowing everything, if God left a loophole there, he intended it to be there for us to use. So none of the subplots tie into anything at all. The Muslim girl turns up at the concert and that's it. Doesn't have any relevance to anything. And then Duck Dynasty Man returns to shill for the phone companies and gets everyone to waste a load of money texting people to promote the film for them.
Yeah.
In a weird sort of meta fourth wall scene that doesn't have any bearing on anything whatsoever other than selling the film. This song, anyway, they start singing "God's not dead, he's surely alive." Apparently God is roaring like a lion. Now, isn't that blasphemous on some level? Because surely a lion roars like God, not the other way round.
Ooh, yes.
No, you're just being... This is a typical close-minded so-called atheist view, where you're trying to find these tiny little details as if you're trying to turn scripture in on itself. That's not what it's about. See, I'm choking on my own rage here. That's not what... See, as you're typical of your scientist mind... trying to find facts when what you need to do is look at the bigger picture and find faith.
There's a little montage. The Professor Radisson's dead. We're meant to take it as a happy ending. And then the screen comes up with the words, "Text everyone you know." The most offensive, cynical bit of marketing bullshit.
Oh, I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it.
Unbelievable. And I bet it worked, because this film made so much money. So, I mean, I bet that was a big part of it. I bet everyone got on their phone. Not Twitter. Because the people who go to watch this shit probably don't use Twitter. They don't care if it's trending or not. They get out their phones and they text "God's not dead." And apparently people know what that means.
I believe it was the most profitable independent film of 2014. It did make quite a bit of money.
And then, as the end credits continue, we get the words, "God's Not Dead, the movie, was inspired by the following legal cases where university students and campus ministries were condemned for their faith," which is a cheap ploy to make the whole thing seem more credible to idiots. No context given for any case whatsoever. So I picked the first three out and looked them up just to kind of see what we were talking about here, because I was sceptical that these would be anything close to unreasonable cases. So the first case was Ward v. Wilbanks, Eastern Michigan University, 2009 to 2012, in which a student in a counselling program was trying to claim a right to discriminate against clients that wished to discuss same-sex relationships with them on the grounds that it violated her religious beliefs. Basically,
it's an immoral thing to do.
Basically, a student believed to work with gay people in the school counselling program and took them to court because they basically said, "Well, you either do it or you're not part of the program." So that's a pathetic court case to be putting up as like proof that atheists are bad.
But they won. They won. She didn't have to deal with the queers. Sorry, I meant homosexuals.
Did they win?
Well, I presume so. If they're citing it.
No, I don't think all these. I think a lot of these went the other way. These ones that were cited, from what I was looking at.
Oh, okay. Well, then that's the so-called homosexual liberal elite trying to stop our rights of not being gay. They want us all to be gay.
The third case, Keaton v. Anderson Wiley, Augusta State University, 2010 to 2011, was the exact same thing. A grad student in a counselling program who wished to avoid LGBTQ students. And basically they wanted to have the option to avoid them or to subject them to conversion therapy. And ultimately refused to comply with the program required as the university laid it out. The second case... Badger Catholic Foundation v. Walsh University of Wisconsin, 2007 to 2011. Basically, University of Wisconsin charges students a fee that's distributed amongst extracurricular activities and services, so counselling, tutoring, student organisations.
But I don't want my money going to the gay organisations.
But what happened, Alan?
What if my good Christian money goes to like a Muslim organisation or something like that?
The University of Wisconsin Roman Catholic Foundation, also known as the Badger Catholic, for some reason, applied to be one of these student groups, which would mean that they would receive funding. They were rejected.
Yeah, good. They should. What?
They were rejected, not because of religious grounds, but because the group included many non-students, including a bishop. And eventually they reorganised the group and were approved for membership. They then had to submit a budget.
Yes, a victory for God.
They then had to submit a budget for approval of funding, as is the case with all of these groups. But each budget was partly rejected because much of the speech that they carried out was religious in character. And the university clearly stated...
Oh, attack on religion. Suddenly, religion is an evil thing we must take out of universities. Oh my God. This is the PC gone mad.
The university won't pay for 3 categories of speech: worship, proselytizing, and religious instruction. It's willing to...
You notice they've got nothing there against hate speech, racist speech. That's fine. They'll put money into that.
They probably wouldn't let the group exist in the first place on hate speech grounds, I would have thought. It's willing to use it for what it calls dialogue, discussion, or debate from religious perspective, but not for anything that is like specifically preaching and telling you how to behave and how to think. The program's rejected things like spiritual mentoring sessions with nuns and priests, and a retreat consisting of masses and communal prayer sessions. So basically, it's a court case that comes down to the religious people just not reading the rules properly and trying to submit their like dodgy receipts.
I'm going to see if I can get refunds for the money I spent to like rent these things, because I'm not okay that I've given money to such a company that would align itself with such cases.
And those were the first 3 that I picked out, and there was a long list, and I'm pretty sure it's all the same shit. So
must have been a couple of dozen at least.
So I didn't see a single one that was legitimately like Christians being picked on or people being like unfairly prejudiced against them or anything like that. It was just a lot of petty bullshit on the side of Christianity. Much like God's Not Dead. So, started off not being that bad, this film, but by the end of it, this is the worst film I've ever seen.
I'm happy to hear you say that, because I think it's true for me as well. I can't think of anything else that has been completely devoid of, apart from one scene which was unintentionally hilarious, and a sort of okay... promising 10-15 minutes at the start. I just hated everything that I was seeing.
It's offensive. It's just so transparently, thinly, badly written. Like, offensively badly written. It's hack writing. The message it's putting forth is, like, disgusting. So, fuck God's Not Dead. It's shit. And it's dangerous, frankly. And... I hate it, and it is my least favourite film ever made. It's topped Day of the Dead 2 Contagion. That means the Resident Evil films are one step closer to being out of the bottom 10 of all time, Calvin. You'll be pleased to know.
Oh, hooray!
Well, I mean, it's pretty clear you brought your own prejudices and issues into this, which, that's fair enough. It's something you're going to have to work through. You'll find God later, maybe. And if you ever want to talk, I'm here.
That's what we're doing right now, isn't it?
Shall we briskly move on to the next film?
Yeah.
Which came a couple of years later, I believe. Stars Melissa Joan Hart, Sabrina the Teenage Witch herself.
Oh yeah,
who is apparently quite a big Republican Christian.
Yeah.
So
to say she was promoting witchcraft to children at an early
well, that's
age.
what I was thinking. Like talking cats and witchcraft. Come on,
it's just a bit of fun.
not for Christians.
I also love there's Jesse Metcalfe in here as well, who's her hunky lawyer that she gets saddled with, and he's best known as being an adulterous gardener who's having an underage sexual relationship with a housewife on Desperate Housewives.
Well, the guy who plays the lawyer that she goes up against, what's his name?
Oh, Ray Wise.
To me, I don't know about you guys, to me he's best known for literally playing Satan in that show Reaper.
Oh, no, I know him from Twin Peaks.
And he pops up in Fargo as a character who's kind of, you could certainly ambiguously believe is Satan. I think he's kind of based on another old religious figure, but...
Yeah, he often plays sort of villains, I guess, with a face like that.
Not just villains,
he just has a way
Satan.
about him.
Literally the devil. I felt a little bit bad for Ernie Hudson before this film, but now I feel really bad for him.
He was the only one that I was sort of like, is he religious or is he just taking this for the money?
Yeah.
Come on, of course he is. Judge Ernie Hudson, he's right there. What makes you think that, Ernie Hudson, I've seen him in things, I like him, he can't possibly be a Christian?
I can't think... No, actually, that's true. I do like Kelsey Grammer, and he's one of those. So...
Well, I was surprised to see characters from the first film pop up anyway. I thought it was going to be a completely new break.
I was surprised about that. That was my first note as well. And then it turns out to basically be a completely new story with just the same subplots that don't go anywhere.
Yeah. So the A-plot now is Melissa Joan Hart, and she's a teacher, and she mentions Jesus in a class, and then she gets taken to court over it.
And at the fucking start, there's a bit where they're reading out these truths that we hold to be universal or blah, 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 blah.
No, she's doing it as if she's doing it like it's a quiz, and they're like, right, what's this from? And they do know it, but they're like, oh, yeah, it's this one, and then they answer.
But it's like, but they have to confer with each other.
But yeah, they are supposed to be like 16.
I knew what that was when I was 16. I would have won that round of the quiz. And I'm English. That's my point. They were so like... Anyway, yeah, so what happens? She mentions like Jesus in class. The student goes home and says, the teacher, she said something about Jesus. It was really nice. And then people are like, whoa! Not okay. You cannot mention
the typical
Jesus.
Atheist knee-jerk reaction to hearing about Jesus, who was a real person, who just gave good moral teachings.
And they go straight into the court case in this one. There's no attempt to...
Oh, it comes up very quickly, doesn't it? I was surprised. I thought we'd be waiting an hour for it, because this film is longer than the last one.
It's a courtroom drama, yes.
No, I know, but the first one was, really, and it took ages getting round to it. You know what's bizarre, though, is it takes them over an hour to get to trying to use the fact that Jesus was a real person as a defense in this court case, even though that would be the first fucking thing that you go to, surely. It takes them over an hour to even think of using that as a defense.
Yeah, I like that bit, because, they're fighting for faith and belief, so, try and get out of it on a technicality. I like that.
And then Sabrina goes and does some crying in her bedroom, which really hits home that she's not much of an actor. And there's never the slightest shred of doubt in either of these films what the outcome's going to be. Actually, that's not entirely true. For a bit of time at the start, you think, well, this could go a few ways, this debate. It could, the professor might come round to his way of thinking. They might just end on like a note of mutual respect. But certainly the second film, there's no shadow of doubt how it's going to play out and how the court's going to rule. So, like, why even...
Actually, well, you say that. When like I said, they were trying to get off on a technicality, like, it wasn't about faith, it was history. It's like, okay, well, that's not really the point, is it? So when they abandoned that, I was kind of, all right, they're going to go with the ending that what this film needed was she does lose the case, the atheists win, and so, hey, they're keeping Christianity out of the schools, right? Is that what you want? But then she, like, goes and works in a Christian school, or like, she goes and decides to devote her life to preaching to people in Venezuela or whatever. So she would just like, okay, well, if God's will was to make me lose this case, he must have some other purpose for me. I thought that was going to be the message when it looked like she was going to lose. And then your other side message would be, hey, the system's trying to keep us down, man.
That would be far too intelligent.
Well, exactly. I mean, I thought that's where it was going. I was like, oh, it's actually not bad ending if you're trying to, send that message. But no, they just win through passion and prayer, I believe, was the reason.
Oh, yeah, no, it literally, again, just people praying saves the day, and people are, like, thanking God at the end.
And then...
Melissa Joan Hart's looking after this old guy who's, like, infirm or whatever, and he's, like,
Pat
giving
Boone.
them all the thumbs up. Who?
Pat Boone.
Is that
Pat Boone was a very famous singer in, like, the 50s.
It basically ends as Melissa Joan Hart turns to the camera and says, post about this film on Facebook and tell all your friends. Text everyone, God's Not Dead 2.
Can I ask something that they didn't bring up in the film, which I thought was weird? That, you know, when she's testifying in court and other people testifying as well, she swears to tell the truth on a Bible. Does that not seem somewhat... I don't know, it feels like that should at least be addressed, that this whole court works on, like, the word of God.
It would be a sensible, you know, way for the court, like, case to, you know, the defence to point it out. Like, as an opening
just say,
argument,
look, we obviously have a lot of belief in religion.
I think anything like that is going to make the point that Christianity is actually hugely embedded within American culture and everyday life, and that Christianity isn't under attack and being oppressed, and Christians aren't an oppressed people, and it's better to kind of not like ignore all of that so that you can have this other narrative going whereby the Christians are the oppressed ones and need to fight back and go and see this film and tell all of their friends to go and see this film and then go see the film again and again and make lots and lots of money for the Reverend Dave running his Rizzo Films knockoff.
Were you disappointed by the lack of defamation of other religions in this film, in the sequel? I thought I would only give the Hindus a bit of a slap.
It made it slightly more palatable, at least, that it didn't even go there.
Yeah, my final note here is that the second one is a worse made film, but not as offensive and less insidious.
I probably agree with that.
It's more upfront in the fact that it's just complete and utter, like, biased twattery. So, the first one is more dangerous and offensive, and I really didn't like it. God's Not Dead 2 is my third least favourite film of all time. So, Calvin,
Really?
do you know what this means?
There's no more Resident Evil films in your top 10 worst films of all time?
But the first Resident Evil has been pushed out of the 10.
Hooray!
So
does that mean that 2 will still be there, won't it? 4...
Apocalypse and Afterlife are still there at number 4.
Ah, right,
number
yes,
5.
2 and 4.
I don't like the Resident Evil films. I think they're immoral.
Why? Zombies are in the Bible. Jesus was a zombie, mate.
That is blasphemous.
No, he was. Lazarus
is not a zombie. He was resurrected by the power of belief and thoughts and prayers.
I don't understand the difference. Isn't that what Evil Dead is?
So, is God Is Not Dead... God Is Not Dead 3 isn't God Is Not Dead 3. It's God Is Not Dead, A Light in Darkness. But I had a look at Pure Flix Entertainment, like other films in their repertoire. There's one that actually had, like, Renee Zellweger and some other big actor in it. Oh, this is it, yeah. Renee Zellweger, Greg Kinnear, John Voight, Olivia Holt... it's called Same Kind of Difference as Me.
What?
And it was released last year, October 2017.
So, I mean, I don't know about this. A lot of rules. I'm just starting to think twice about all this Christianity thing.
I think you should, Alan. Yes, I don't think it's a lifestyle for you.
Shall I sack it off?
Should you what?
Shall I sack it off? Sack.
Oh, right. Oh, okay.
Shall I chuck it in then?
I don't think you should.
Yeah.
I think you should keep it up.
No.
It's not been at all tedious, this whole episode.
The thing is, I have accepted God into my life and all that, but I do have this nagging doubt that, it's obviously bollocks. I can feel the darkness closing back in, guys.
Oh god, it's the 2-hour setup for that fucking laboured punchline.
Bollocks to it. I can't be arsed with all this Christianity shit. Alright, guys. I'm back. Religion is evil. Religion is designed to oppress the masses. But, these are masses that need to be oppressed because they're fucking idiots.
If these films are anything to go by, without religion, they'd be turning to Duck Dynasty, so...
Keeps them off the streets, doesn't it?
Exactly. So, should we pitch a third one?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I'd be curious to know ratings. I'm curious to know what rating Saul's worst film of all time gets.
Well, I presume it's got to be a 1.
1 out of 10, unless we can go lower.
Well, I was wondering if we went to 0, quite frankly.
I think we only go to 1, but if we go to 0, it's a 0. It's the lowest possible score for both of them.
Yeah, it's only 1. See, I went with I gave the first one 4, and the second one 4.
Really?
Yeah.
What?
So
God, they did get to you, didn't
Just
they?
because I didn't agree with the message doesn't mean completely. I don't. Same as.
But that's like watching Triumph of the Will and never mind.
Beautiful cinematography.
I mean, so which were the 2 Oscar films you gave a 4? Was it 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri?
Yes.
So Alan Turing official scores. God's Not Dead, as good as 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. They can put that on the poster.
It annoyed me less than 3 Billboards.
Well, that's just like something's misfiring in your brain somewhere.
Well, at least this is it's not dishonest, is it? It's putting it out what it is.
The first one, I would argue, is somewhat dishonest and insidious. The second one is very blatant about what it is. So, yeah, but 4 is very generous. That's what you gave Phantom Thread. That's what you gave 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri.
Yeah, but the structure of this film was better than Phantom Thread.
No, it wasn't.
Phantom Thread is fucking boring, which is a sin.
I'm flabbergasted. Calvin.
That's affected you more than me pretending to be a Christian for 2 hours.
Yeah, because I knew you were joking there.
I
must admit, Alan, I am shocked. Really, it's unbecoming.
It was one of those things where I wasn't really sure where to put this, and obviously, in terms of the message it was preaching, I didn't agree with it, and I don't think it was very subtly done. But I don't know. I thought
the writing of all of the supporting characters and how it went about putting its message across, and how it was so unashamedly, overtly biased without any attempt at like legitimately portraying any other side was just lazy.
But I'm all right. I'm all right with that. It is a piece of propaganda, and it sets out to be that, and it achieves that. I'm not. That's what I was expecting. So it wasn't like.
I think it's going to have to be a 1 for both of them. Yeah, 1 for both.
Okay, so they're both going to have the same score then. 2 out of 10. Is that the 2 lowest rated films we've ever done?
It must be, surely.
I'm just going to look it up.
Because Calvin likes Resident Evil.
Even despite Alan's horrific generosity.
No, it's not. That makes them the joint 4th worst film we've ever reviewed.
What?
What's lower then?
What have we seen that's worse?
Fast and the Furious, Tokyo Drift.
The
Happening.
Fair enough, yeah.
That's.
Definitely.
Hang on, what was the other one? Sorry, I missed that. I was laughing at Tokyo.
The Happening.
Well, that's fair.
It's not. That's really unfair. And AVPR, Aliens vs. Predator Requiem.
Oh, that's true, actually. What did we give AVPR? Because I'm
1
pretty sure we
across
all
the
gave
board.
that.
All 3 of us gave it 1 out of 10.
So that will be the lowest rated film.
It might be joint place with others, but yeah.
That's fair. Did we? I gave The Happening 1, didn't I?
Yeah, you both gave The Happening 1 and I gave it a 3.
Okay. I can't believe that God Is Not Dead is not going to be the lowest rated film on the site.
I think that's very unfair. The Happening's much more fun than God's Not Dead.
So, shall we try and come up with an idea for what our sequel would be?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did want to see a sequel where we deal with the teenage girl in the second film. Her just basically living with her parents, and it'd be really awkward because they just tried to sue her teacher and she was really against them. And I just wondered...
Yeah, they don't really resolve that at the end, do they? They just sort of go off walking through a door with the nasty lawyer.
Well, I love that scene because they basically just explained what he'd done, just in case we'd missed the point. That he was being nasty to prove a point. And we don't, unfortunately, get to really see what happens behind the scenes with them. Where she's like, they're suing someone on her behalf, even though she doesn't want them to. It would have been nice to see a bit more of that. And then, like, just the aftermath of it. She's like, you lost. And they're like, we have to sell the house to pay the legal fees. And then she's like, oh shit. Should have let you
I've got an idea.
Oh, yeah?
No.
God's not bread, and
but he is.
Someone
if you're
makes
Catholic.
toast. I'm making this up on the spot. Someone makes toast one day, and they look at it, and it's the face of Jesus in their toast. And they try to sell it on eBay, and it goes for like £1 million trillion. But then like some angry snowflake liberal lefty starts a court case saying it's violates the Trade Descriptions Act or something, because they're saying it's a divine image in the toast and that they can't prove that it's divine. So there's a court case to prove that God's bread or God's not bread. And
I mean, I don't think you're really addressing the Protestant Catholic issues you're going to come up against with this. Because God's not wafers.
So my sort of initial thought would be to go down a similar sort of baking route, because I was thinking, like, obviously the plots for these two films are sort of ripped from the headlines, as it were, like based on real court cases. You're always hearing about Christian bakers who are refusing to bake cakes for like gays and
gay
lesbians
wedding,
and stuff. So,
but they all want cakes of a big cock.
Well, that's what we do, wouldn't it? That's what they would be. They'd be like really unreasonably wanting some kind of.
They want a big spunking cock with like marshmallow spunk flowing out, and
I was thinking something like even more blasphemous, like, you know, Jesus on the cross being wanked off or something like that. And because obviously they have to be the most unreasonable, nasty, demanding people who are disrespectful of the baker who is just running a nice little family bakery.
Can we make them like those two characters in James Bond?
Mr. Winter, Mr. Kid. From Diamonds Are Forever. Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea.
So they're quite threatening.
I would love to get those two actors back as like an older gay couple. And they can be really creepy and hang around the bakery and get the gay mafia on them and stuff.
How do you feel about that, by the way? Like, say if you're a baker and you're, for whatever reason, you don't like the gays, right? Doesn't matter really if it's Christianity or whatever. They say, look, we want a gay cake for our gay wedding. And you say, no, it's not my thing. I don't agree with that, so I don't want to be a part of it. Do you think they shouldn't be allowed to do that?
No, because then that's going back to the days of when you would rent out a room, or people would rent out a room, and have a sign up saying no blacks, no Irish, no, Asians or whatever.
I think if we lived in a vacuum, I do think that, people should be allowed to do what they want, as reprehensible as it is. So I do kind of feel like in an ideal situation, it shouldn't be illegal to not make a gay wedding cake or I mean, it's different. If they wanted it to be a cake that said like "Happy Gay Wedding" and they refused, I think that should be fine. If they just wanted to buy a normal wedding cake, but it like was for their gay wedding and they refused, that's different. But obviously, I do think there needs to be some degree of legislation to step in and stand up for people, because sadly, in certain areas, particularly in America, you will find enough small town mentality that will make trouble for people, which is why I assume it does become a legal issue. Personally, if I was a gay fiance, then I probably wouldn't want to give custom to the anti-gay bakery in the first place, and I would have thought, like, hopefully enough other local people would, like, not shop there for the same reason. But like I say, in practice, the sort of ideal way of things often isn't how it plays out. So, yeah, it's a bit of an iffy area, really, because...
No, I think still rejecting something like that would be to do that on the basis of personal prejudice. And when you're running a business, you can't run a business on the basis of, we'll only cater to this one particular group of society that I agree with.
But you can, surely, can't you? If you run a private industry, you can do what you want with it.
But why is this just... This argument only ever seems to come out when it's related to gay cake baking. It's like...
It's because no one would be brazen enough to try it with, like, racial stuff in this day and age.
Well, there was that landlord who owns, like, hundreds of houses across the UK or something. He's like a very profitable landlord, and he's refusing to rent out his properties to Indian people because, in his words, the smell of curry sticks in the carpets and you can't get it out. So should he be allowed to do that? On that, it's the same logic.
Well, again, like, a landlord does have the right to just pick and choose who they want to rent to. That is how the law works. And so if he kept quiet about the fact that that's why, he would have probably got away with it. But it's one of those things where, like I say, I in an ideal world, I think people should have the right to be complete cunts, but then people should, not stand for it and not rent from them and not be nice to them and tell them that they're being an awful person and that sort of thing. But then in reality, that isn't how it works, and that's why the law tends to get involved and step in and say, mate, you're being a twat. In theory, I'm against the smoking ban, because I think in theory it should be up to an establishment if people can or can't smoke in there, and if you don't like secondhand smoke, don't go into that establishment. It's not a public place. It's you don't have to go in there. At the same time, it happened because in practice, no business was going to be the one that stepped out and said no smokers here, because it'd be bad for business and it was never going to go anywhere. So it's one of these things where ideology and practicality kind of don't quite match up, I think.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm not trying to come down on either side, really. I think it's interesting that certain rights are protected, and then, like, say you owned a hotel or something and someone rented out a space from you because they were doing a big screening of God's Not Dead, and then they were going to have a big discussion afterwards, a nice little prayer meeting. If you were going, nah, sorry, not having that, would that be all right? It's a general space that you rent out for functions and stuff. It happens all the time.
Well, if you just didn't want to do it because you didn't like Christianity and stuff, then yeah, that's not on, really.
Yeah.
So what if it was like a Nazi meetup and they were like, yeah, we're just going to do some Nazi speeches and just, general a bit of Nazi chat. We'll keep it within that room, don't worry. We're not going to... Can you say no to that?
Would you?
Well, I'm just saying.
I mean, yeah,
I think I would,
yeah,
but
you
it
know
would
what,
make me somewhat hypocritical. Yeah, I accept that.
I'd probably say no to the God is Not Dead viewing as well, but I just didn't want to sound like too much of a hypocrite right off the bat. But...
It's like, if someone said, can we rent the screen out and play Resident Evil, I'd be like, no, get out.
But that's it. And I think it's the same thing. If you allow something like that to happen within your business, you are giving tacit consent to that. And if it's something you're against, then I can understand why you don't want to do it. It seems like what it comes down to is like if most people agree with you or not. That's pretty much, which is fair enough because that's what society is. It's just communal.
And that's it. It's
rules,
where you draw the line, I think. And I like the bakery one. I think it should be the bakery. It should be a cake for a gay.
It's ripped from the headlines.
Yeah. A gay couple on a cake.
You need to go bigger though. You need to keep going bigger. See, I'd say Supreme Court, but we've done the courtroom drama already.
It should be in heaven at the pearly gates, and they're having it between God and Satan.
Because the bakery blows up.
Yeah.
And kills everyone.
Because the gays demand that it be so pink, they're like putting in all these additives like nitroglycerin to make it really nice and pink.
Pink nitroglycerin,
yeah.
I think what's really important is a bankable star. So who do we know that's a good Christian star who will come on board and back us? And it's prepared to it's not only someone who's Christian, but someone who's prepared to just like put themselves out there and go, hey, whoa Christians, whoa Christianity. And so far we've got Kevin Sorbo and Clarissa Explains It All. So it's obviously not a deep pool we're looking at here.
But I think we need someone bigger than that because these are bringing in less money, and we need to reignite interest in the franchise. So let's invest in a bigger name this time.
Who's the biggest Christian?
Well, is James Woods a Christian? Because he's a cunt now. So I reckon he'd be very happy to make an anti-gay film.
I'm looking up Hollywood Christians. John Ratzenberger's a big Christian.
He can do the voice of God.
He wouldn't do it though. He's too savvy again.
Well, here we are at my pearly gates, and I hear you've been baking a cake. Oh, Patricia Heaton from Everybody Loves Raymond. She's a big Christian. Oh, Denzel Washington, apparently.
Ooh.
Now we're talking.
But again, he's a bit of a keeps it under wraps.
Well,
Knows
he's
it's
the
not
sort
too
of Christian that probably doesn't hate gay people. He's probably the sort of Christian who just sort of says, "Hey, just try to be a good guy."
He did defend Tom Hanks when he was gay. So
Chuck Norris.
Oh,
ooh.
Chuck Norris might actually be
Could we
perfect.
make this into more of an action film?
Chuck Norris, Gary Busey.
I think Kelsey Grammer have come in.
Yeah, all three of them.
Kelsey Grammer would be
brilliant.
like the lawyer who is the bad guy,
Yes.
who's the atheist, terrible bad guy. But he's doing it for the.
Gary Busey's one of the two gay people who comes in and demands they make the cake, and he's really unreasonable. Chuck Norris is the simple baker who's just trying to make an honest living as a baker, but he's getting on. He's been a small town baker for decades. I think cameo from George Foreman as himself.
He'd be come around to the bakery to sell some grills, see if he's going around all the catering establishments.
Who's that? That 2.5 Men boy, the half one.
The half man.
Oh yes, Angus. Something.
Yeah,
T.
get him in
Jones.
there.
Angus Jones.
He can be the other one in the gay couple because they're a gay couple. There's a big age gap to prove how depraved they are.
Brilliant.
I think that's all good, isn't it? Solid. I've got a genuinely realistic casting choice for our lead here. Looking on a list of Christians, Stephen Baldwin.
Oh, he can't be
perfect.
busy.
That's the right level, isn't it?
Yes.
He apparently became a born again Christian after 9/11.
Oh, he's
they're the best
perfect.
ones. They're totally mental.
He believes that his outspoken Christian opinions have cost him film roles, means that he's not been cast, so he's bitter about Hollywood. He'll be happy to take a leading role in a film like this. So
Fantastic.
Oh, some of the films he's done recently: God's Club, Faith of Our Fathers,
wow,
The Unmiracle. I don't know what that means. The Apostle Peter: Redemption.
I think I've only really ever seen Stephen Baldwin in roles that are meta takes on Alec Baldwin, if that makes sense. Like if in 30 Rock, if Alec Baldwin looks in a funhouse mirror, they'd get Stephen Baldwin in to be the reflection, that sort of thing. I think that's all I've ever seen him do.
Not only is Stephen Baldwin the top choice here, I'm looking at his recent films. Here's one called Let the Lion Roar.
Oh, wow.
Starring Kevin Sorbo.
Wow.
And I think he's all in. This is Let the Lion Roar, uncover one of the greatest and darkest deceptions of our time, the conspiracy to cover up the church's true identity.
He also did something called I'm in Love with a Church Girl and something called Dino Time. Dino Time! And something called Mission, The Prophet. Shark in Venice. Oh my god, he's done some amazing sounding things.
Here's another one, right? Tapestry is the story of a man, Stephen Baldwin, in the midst of a heavy personal and spiritual crisis. Aided by his father and family, he embarks on a personal journey that will forever change him. This is what Stephen Baldwin does. You completely nailed it. He's our man.
And at the end, a call for everyone to go out and text their friends with the phrase,
Cake's not dead.
He's still not dead, you know.
Wait a minute. When do the Newsboys come into this?
Oh.
No, they're getting a cake for a big concert. And it's a cake of Christ on the crucifix. What's the big finish, though? What's the big takeaway from it? They don't make the cake? What happens? Is he he thinks he's going to have to make the cake?
They win the court case.
He makes the balls, he makes the shaft, but then he's just getting ready to put the spunk on, and then someone comes in and goes, "You won the case, don't make the cake," and then he just chops the end of it off.
They just eat the cake before anyone can see it. Scoffing it down.
That's your big closer. Stephen Baldwin's face in a giant
wolfing down
ball.
a cock penis cake. Bits of spit coming out the side of his mouth, choking on it as he wolfs it down, gagging.
Why is he doing it in a rush?
Because he knows
someone walks in
the reporters are on the way to get his comment, and he doesn't want to let them see the cake.
And then all his Christian friends come in to help him eat it, to eat the evidence.
And it becomes the body of Christ as they pass it
Yeah.
around. And they wash it down with some blood of Christ.
Wacky Pastor Dave comes in, blesses it, even though it's a different type of Christianity. And then it becomes the body of the cock of Christ.
And they wash it down with some blood of Christ, and that's the end. They have a nice pray. We've nailed it. This is
definitely blasphemous.
I think that's brilliant.
What we're saying. Yeah. Well, we're all going to hell.
Well, there you go. I hope we didn't offend too many of you. I'm sure if you've come this far, we didn't. So there's no point in saying this, is there? Anyway, that was God's Not Dead. Let us know what you thought of this. If you liked hearing us get into theology and religion, then we might consider making this a kind of annual tradition, much like we do with our 50 Shades Sex Fest episodes now, and Calvin's trying to get shark movies going as an annual thing as well. So let us know. And speaking of shark movies, yes, Calvin has insisted that we do Deep Blue Sea next week, so that's our third shark movie episode in less than 2 years. Apparently Deep Blue Sea 2 is coming out or something. And as ever, go to dimreturns.com in the meantime for news and contact info and all that stuff. Get involved in the discussion. See you next week. Bye.